Hello, everyone. We are back. And once again, we are blessed to have Dr. Hardt with us. Dr. Hardt, thank you so much for making the time.
Doug, it's always a highlight of my day when we get to talk.
As it is mine. I know there's a lot going on at the Biocybernaut Institute. Dr. Hardt, a question came in and somebody had asked, what is the difference between alpha brainwaves and delta brainwaves?
Well, a simple answer is a lot. And it would be like saying, what's the difference between the processes that go on in the nucleus of a living cell when it's undergoing mitosis and the DNA strands are separating and replicating on one hand, and what are the processes going on in a thermonuclear explosion or inside a hydrogen bomb. They are at such different orders of scale. Language fails, actually. We can it's probably easiest to talk about one and then to talk about the other and leave it to the listener to decide what the differences are.
Sounds good.
Okay. So alpha. Alpha is, for most people, the dominant rhythm of their brains, the biggest amplitude. It's neither the fastest nor the slowest brainwave. And the reason it's called alpha is because it was the first brainwave to be discovered in 1908 by Dr. Hans Berger, working with very primitive equipment and very weak amplifiers. So the only wave that he was able to detect was the biggest wave, which for most people is alpha. It's between 8 and 13 cycles per second. It's typically sinusoidal in appearance, and it occurs in groups of waves called spindles that travel together. Lions come in prides and birds come in flocks, and alpha waves come in spindles. And spindles have a variety of amazing and very beautiful shapes, which I'm sure have psychological and physiological meaning. Some spindles ramp up exponentially and then collapse. Others start big and then shrink exponentially. Others are like big, long cigars, flat in the middle, which we call hypovariability of amplitude. Now, that is mostly seen in advanced meditators. For example, in the advanced Zen that I worked with, they could sometimes keep an alpha spindle going 10 seconds, maybe even 20 seconds. But then invariably they'd lose it, they'd fall out of the state, because brainwaves rule, they determine what state of consciousness you're experiencing. And then maybe within just 1 or 2 waves, a 10th or a 20th of a second, they're back. But they do wobble. They can steady their mind for 10, maybe 20 seconds, but then they wobble, they lose it, and then they get back on the horse or on the rocket ship. And so the spindles have great beauty, great variety, and they have meaning. And so, everybody has some. I've never, in over 7,000 people that I've seen brainwaves on, I've never seen someone who had 0 alpha. Below 400 on our scale, we know that the person either attempted suicide or seriously considered it. Insufficient alpha is not an indicator of continuity of life. Absence of alpha is an indicator of imminently pending mortality. but also people have the ability to learn it, to reduce it, to increase it. And when alpha is increased, and depending on where on the head, for example, if you increase alpha at C3, paranoia goes down. If you increase alpha at O1 or O2, the two occipital regions, SC, which is schizophrenia on the MMPI, and psychasthenia, PS, both of these go down with occipital alpha. And you can increase alpha anywhere on the head, and anxiety will go down. Welsh A is the first factor of the MMPI. It stands for Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. But it isn't just remediation of dysfunction that attends to increased alpha. There are a bunch of wonderful things that increase, for example, creativity. In a study I did with Stanford Research Institute scientists and a control group, we measured their creativity before and after alpha training for the scientists who did the alpha training, and between the non-feedback lab visits of the people who did not do the alpha training. There was no change in creativity of people who just came to the lab and had their blood pressure, muscle tension, and skin temperature measured. But in the SRI scientists who actually did the alpha training, there was a monstrous 50% increase in their creativity. Problems that they'd been stumped by, unable to solve for 2 years in some cases, zap, in the alpha chamber. Problem was just solved quickly, efficiently, in a manner that distinguished them as creative people. There's also an IQ boost from alpha that averages 11.7 points and stable at least a year out. We haven't checked beyond that, but there's no diminution of the IQ boost even 1 year out. There are also increases, big useful increases in emotional intelligence, or EQ, that average 15.8 points with the premium double alpha training at Biocybernaut. So we have reduction of bad things, increase of good things, and this happens when people learn how to voluntarily increase their EEG alpha activity. So a very wide range of things. There are also suggestions that the immune system, both the humorally mediated and the cellularly mediated immune system, are benefited. I know of one study that was done with AIDS patients who, the opportunistic infections begin to show up when the T cells are below 200 per unit volume of blood. And so they were given a week of alpha training, and suddenly everybody is over 1,000. They were all under 200, and after a week of alpha training, their T cell count's over 1,000. This has got to be good for your cellularly mediated immune system. Well, there was another study done with, this was indirect but inferential, where salivary immunoglobulin A was measured in college students. That's one of the components of the humorally mediated immune system. And so they measured the salivary immunoglobulin A in a big group of college students, divided them in half, and half of them saw a wonderful, spiritually uplifting film about Mother Teresa. And then their salivary immunoglobulin levels were measured, and they had increased dramatically. The other group saw a bloody, gory film about Genghis Khan, and not surprisingly, their salivary immunoglobulin A levels had dropped. So we can, of course, infer that the heartwarming alphagenic Mother Teresa movie was associated with increased salivary immunoglobulin A effect, and the bloody, gory Genghis Khan film had the opposite effect. So it's reasonable to assume that in addition to personality changes that are beneficial changes in creativity and IQ and emotional intelligence, that there are also benefits in terms of both branches of the human immune system associated with increased alpha. And so there are many, many good things that we can say about alpha. Now, it's occupied decades of my research career, spanning several major universities, Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh and University of California, San Francisco Medical Center in San Francisco, plus research done at the Biocybernaut Institute. Now, the Delta work is not as abundant, have not been doing it for as many years. And so to give you a flavor for what it feels like to be in conscious Delta, we can start by imagining that you've fallen into a deep sleep and then you become conscious. And you're aware, you're not really in very good control of your body, like you wouldn't try, running upstairs in this state. But you can be aware that you have a body. You can move it gently. In your reclining position, you do Delta training lying down, unlike Alpha, which you do sitting quite upright, spine erect. Yogananda would say, when you're meditating, imagine that your whole body is being suspended from a hook in the top of your head. So it literally hangs vertically, all the vertebrae lined up. But in Delta, you've now become awake and you kind of sort of look out. You can't really see very clearly, but it's dark all around you. There's a little strip of light at the distant horizon ahead of you. And were you to go in that direction and then go up, you would go up above the clouds and you'd be back in the sunlight of normal waking awareness. So you're aware, you're awake, but you're also very deeply interior. And you don't have the normal control of your body that you do when you're in Alpha, and sometimes even in Theta. People sleepwalk sometimes pretty effectively, don't fall down the stairs, when they're in Theta. But in Delta, you're pretty motionless. And the awareness is deep and it's broad. So if you were to imagine in Alpha, you're in a boat, glass bottom boat, maybe floating on the surface of the lake or the ocean. You can see the clouds, you can see the sunlight, but you can also look down through the glass bottom boat into the depths. You don't experience a lot of pressure because you're just at the surface. But with Delta, you would jump out of the boat carrying a big weight, and you would sink down to near the bottom, and you would hang out there, and it would be dark, it would be still, but you would be aware through, for example, your ears, of the sounds occurring throughout a vast region of the lake or the ocean. Dolphins do echolocation. They resolve the clicks that they emit in order to have three-dimensional perception of the water environment in which they live. And so in Delta is very powerful for manifesting, but you cannot, like, for example, many people who teach manifesting will ask you to formulate an intention. Maybe you even say it, 5 or 10 times, but you don't keep mindlessly repeating it because then it just becomes repetition. In order to reify your intention, to make it real, it's necessary for you to have a sense of beingness, a sense of reality, of what it is that you're intending, so that you're experiencing the reality, not wishing for it, not desiring it, but rather experiencing it. And so in Delta, it's even deeper than that. It's important that you let go of any conscious intention. Before you go into Delta, you know what your intentions are, you know what it is you want to manifest. And so you go into this deep state and you experience the beingness of whatever reality it is that you were seeking. And but it can't be, for example, let's say you want a Lamborghini. It would probably be, well, it would definitely be too active to imagine that you're driving up a Swiss mountain, a road, at 180 kilometers an hour in your blue Lamborghini. It's way too active. You could have a distant awareness of motion by someone, not you, in something. Maybe it's the blue Lamborghini, but you have to pull way back from anything related to a conceptualization. Because if you try to have any kind of even lighthearted or very, very tender, very weak intention, it will prevent you from being in Delta. You cannot have a conceptual awareness and be in the Delta state from which manifestation occurs. And so in the Trust in the Heart Sutra, it talks about the importance of having done with comparisons and evaluations. In fact, it says, if you wish to know the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. So even attempting to describe the difference between alpha and delta is a discouraged or prohibited activity from the perspective of the Trust in the Heart Sutra. So the states of being are ideally experienced without comparison, without analysis, without evaluation, without judgment, without making right or wrong. And so beingness is, delta is, alpha is. And if that seems paradoxical, let me close then with a quote from Alan McGlashan's wonderful book, The Savage and Beautiful Country, where he's talking about the unconscious mind. He said, the road to truth is paved with prickly paradox, hard going for bare rational feet.
Beautiful. Well, Dr. Hardt, thank you again for taking time with us.
Well, Doug, it's challenging to speak about the ineffable, the unspeakable, and it's fun to try. It's fun to make the effort, and whenever I do, I come away wondering, well, did anybody get it? Did I communicate what I intended to? Because words are such a poor vehicle for imparting understanding of these topics.
Definitely experience first, but they don't call you the godfather of brainwaves for nothing. You're the man that has the experience, and that's why people are asking the questions.
Well, I hope this was helpful.
It absolutely was. Thank you, Dr. Hardt.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. Listen, if you are looking to improve your brain, your psyche, your ability, your emotions, your ability to really maximize your performance, and you want to really dig into your brain, my dear friend Dr. Jim Hardt and his Biocybernaut program is extraordinary. I've been through it myself. My wife Sage has, members of my family have, and we found it to be truly extraordinary. But it is not for the faint at heart. Unless you're dead serious about really taking things to the next level, don't bother. We went through the Alpha program designed to maximize your ability to create alpha waves. And it was challenging and it was incredibly rewarding. And I'd recommend it to anybody serious about improving the quality of their lives or including the quality of their family lives as well. So check out Cybernaut, check out Dr. Jim Hardt. And if you do, I think you'll be really, really pleased. And the entire time you are learning to think and how you think these electrodes create sounds. And you learn how to put yourself in the zone of alpha. But it's a bitch. It's horrible. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that wants easy experiences, but I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to grow immensely. And by the first day, I'm like, who do I got to shoot to get out of this thing? Oh, it's me. I'm the one that did this shit. Right? But by the end of the week, all three of us were able to go into this state of alpha. And if you're familiar with alpha, the best way I can describe alpha is there's no problem that can't be solved in alpha. Because every problem that we have was created by us.
Thank you for being here and absorbing this information about the science of brainwaves and about the stories of people whose lives have been beneficially altered, improved by doing brainwave training at Biocybernaut. And now I'm reaching out to you to invite you to come and be a part of the Biocybernaut adventure. Biocybernauts are to inner space what astronauts are to outer space. So come and adventure with us. And if you'd like to leave a comment on the videos, you can do that, or there's a link you can click if you'd like to learn more. We welcome you to Biocybernaut.